Live right here on this Football Friday on the early line. And as always, a Football Friday means more than just the National Football League and a Sunday slate. It is a jam-packed and loaded Week 5 slate around college football with 4 ranked versus ranked matchups, the most in a single Saturday tomorrow in Week number 5. And Joe, the game of the year in college football, at least up until this point, comes our way on Saturday night in Tuscaloosa. It is number 4 Alabama and number 2 Georgia. The line is moving as of Thursday afternoon and now this Friday morning. Georgia still remains a road favorite inside Bryant-Denny. And again, it does bear repeating. It would be the first time that Alabama would be a home underdog, even if it's just catching 1.5 and pretty close on the money line since November of 2007. Total on the rise as well. Upper 40s earlier in the week, now north of 50 at 50 and a hook. We've talked about this game earlier on Tuesday. Has your thought changed at all the day prior to we get underway in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, actually, my thought has changed because now that the line has dropped from 2.5 to 3, Ben, I've actually bet more on Georgia. That's exactly how this is going to work. I mean, listen, Georgia struggled against Kentucky on the road.
Yeah.
And of course, then they had the bye week, right? So we've watched what they dominated Clemson, and Clemson all of a sudden doesn't look all that bad, does it? Yeah, they looked really bad against that defense of Georgia here. Now, give credit to Alabama. I mean, Alabama's defense has been pretty decent. In fact, couple of 3 pretty decent passing teams that they pretty much shut down. The problem is they can't defend the run as well as Georgia can. And if they can't run on Georgia, then it's going to be a very long day, I think, for Milroe. I think Georgia clearly is the better defense. I think offensively, they're going to impose their will here. Too many ways to beat you for Georgia. At this number, Georgia on the money line all day long to get it done.
Completely agree, Joe. I still remain pretty steadfast in the idea that Georgia is a better football team. I think Alabama will be in the college football playoff. One of the great things about this game of the year, some might argue, well, the result doesn't matter then if both teams can get into the CFP. Malarkey. We enjoy the atmosphere, the excitement, and the significance of this game, and still might get to see 2 of the best teams nationally in the country play for a national championship when all is said and done, which was not the case last year for Georgia.
Right.
Because, Joe, since the end of 2020, the Bulldogs ended that season on a 4-game win streak. They have played 51 games, including those last 4 to end out 2020. They have won 49 of 51, 49 of 51, with their only 2 losses coming to this Crimson Tide team in the SEC championship. In fact, Alabama and Georgia have met more in postseason play since the 2021 season, 2 SEC titles, and of course a national championship game as well, than they have in regular season affairs. This just the 3rd regular season meeting since 2015. And oh, by the way, in that 2015 regular season matchup, UGA was also the favorite. Alabama has only been an underdog in total 5 times since 2015, 4 of the 5 against the Bulldogs. They're 3-2 straight up and against the spread in those games as an underdog. And Joe, you are correct that we have 2 really good defenses, 2 of the 10 teams around the country allowing less than 10 points per game. And you can look at Georgia in their last game on the road in Lexington and talk about their struggles offensively. They were outgained by the worst SEC offense, that is Kentucky. I still favor Georgia in this football game. All right, let's keep it rolling throughout the rest of the Saturday slate. A top 20 tilt in South Bend between Notre Dame and Louisville. Joe, as we look at this spread, it is near a touchdown in favor of the Fighting Irish. It was also near a touchdown, 6.5 in favor of Notre Dame last year on the road against a top 25 ranked Louisville team. And if you remember, the Irish kept it close against Ohio State. The next week, they won in dramatic comeback fashion on the road in Durham. Had to go to Louisville and play this game as well. We thought Notre Dame got their season back on track with the win over Riley Leonard and the Blue Devils. They got beat outright by the Cardinals. The only game Louisville has been an underdog under second-year head coach Jeff Brom, and they won outright. What are we going to see between these two top 20 teams on Saturday under the watchful eye of Touchdown Jesus?
Well, listen, Ben, I love this. Another one of these revenge games here. As we all know, Notre Dame got burned by Jeff Brom and the Cardinals last year. Why? Because Sam Hartman forgot what team he was playing on and threw 4 interceptions. But Louisville had dominated Hartman when he was at Wake Forest. So there was some history there where maybe Louisville was in Hartman's head. The problem is Louisville did the same thing to Duke and Riley Leonard a year ago, won 23-0 there, went 9 of 23, and it was embarrassing. Does that correlate into another bad showing? I think it does, Ben, and here's the reason why. Louisville cannot rush the ball. They can't rush. You are not going to beat Notre Dame by trying to air it out against that defense and putting him in harm's way here. If they can't run, I think Rourke is in big trouble. I think the defense of Notre Dame is going to show up big here. I think they get the revenge. If you like Notre Dame, don't be weary of the 6.5, Ben. They're going to win and win rather easily.
That's how I feel as well, Joe. The reason that Louisville has been great this year, 3-0 straight up and against the spread, is because of Tyler Shuck, which is a really good thing. However, the big difference last year was the two-headed monster in the backfield of Jawar Jordan and Isaac Guerrero for the Cards. This year, they're going with Donald Chaney, the Miami transfer, who has not emerged as the lead back, and a couple of young freshmen. They barely ran it last week against Georgia Tech. Notre Dame has to play from in front. If you trust the right arm of Riley Leonard, it is going to lead you being screwed time and again. But if they can run the football against a good defensive front for the Cards, they are going to have success. I think they make good on winning a home game and covering for the first time this year. The 2 times they haven't against MAC opponents, at least Louisville is an ACC team. More from Saturday next. Top 25 team in action on this Friday, and it's not even the best game in college football on this Friday night. All eyes will circulate on Piscataway, New Jersey. Let's go to another Big Ten bash, though. One of those 4 ranked versus ranked games we have tomorrow. It's a large spread. Number 9, Penn State, 17.5-point home favorite under the lights in what should be a raucous whiteout type atmosphere in State College against number 19 Illinois. 47.5 is that total. Joe, you see the total, you see the spread. 3 scores, less than 7 touchdowns. Can Penn State cover the number tomorrow night?
They are certainly capable of covering that number, Ben, but my fear is this Penn State defense isn't as good as people are giving them credit for. And I worry about that because is it me or is Illinois' Luke Altmaier basically decided he is going to give everyone the middle finger every week and say, oh, you don't believe I can do this, huh? Well, he has been pretty damn good. He was great in an impossible start in, Friday in Nebraska, right? Friday Night Lights in Nebraska we go. Ends up getting it done when it mattered the most. I think Illinois' defense is certainly on par with Penn State. It would not shock me if we get way more points in this game than we think we are. Sure, Penn State can cover this number. Am I running to the window to back them to do it? Not from what I've seen from Penn State so far.
No. And they are a great favorite. When expected to win a football game under James Franklin, they often do and cover. Since the start of 2022, 19-5-1 against the spread. But how about those Burt Bielema boys for Illinois? I know it's Brett, I like to call him Burt. Barge Ball, there is a reason they have been prolific as an underdog. 14-8 against the spread, 9 outright victories under Burt since the start of 2021. I would never recommend laying 17.5 against this Illini team who put together a masterful defensive performance, only allowing Nebraska 48 rushing yards a week ago. But there are advantages here for Penn State. I think Nicholas Singleton has a big day, over 86.5 rushing yards. Luke Altmaier has played efficient football. Connor Bazelak, a guy with a little bit of Big Ten experience from his days at Indiana, now the Bowling Green quarterback, went into State College, threw for more than 250, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and most importantly, Joe, was not sacked by Penn State. If they can keep Luke Altmaier upright, he has been very efficient this year, the only quarterback in college football with double-digit touchdown tosses and 0 interceptions. I think it's closer. I do think Penn State wins this game outright, probably even by double digits, but just wouldn't lay 17.5. Our fourth and final ranked versus ranked game, Joe, loses a little bit of the appeal that we thought it might have entering this week, as both teams got beat and pretty bad last week. Oklahoma State, close game, but they were a home pick'em against a Cam Rising-less Utah team and got ran all over by Mekhi Bernard. Kansas State suffered what many people have figured out. Late night in Provo is never easy. They got blown out 38-9 against BYU. 4.5, though, is the number this week in favor of the Wildcats. Joe, for two teams still looking to be in contention for the Big 12, and this is an important game. What gives tomorrow in the Little Apple?
That's a huge game, and I would have loved one of these two teams to actually have won last week because it would have made picking this game a lot easier, Ben. But the fact that both of them didn't show up and both of them looked pretty terrible while losing, Oklahoma State at home, Kansas State on the road, it makes this game a little bit more tricky here. The reality is this line opened up at 6. We're seeing 4.5 now. Oklahoma State's money has been coming in. Kleinman has been fantastic when it comes to off a loss in this spot here. They've handled Oklahoma State in the past, but it doesn't take away from the fact that I don't think we've seen Oklahoma State's best yet, namely Ollie Gordon, who is running behind the most experienced offensive line in the country, Ben, and he's only averaging 2.7 yards a carry. I do think that changes in this game. I also think Kansas State's inability to stop the big play is what's going to cost them this game and get Oklahoma State to win outright on the road in Manhattan.
K-State has not been nearly as good defensively as Chris Klieman teams of the past. Oklahoma State as a dog since 2021, 11-6 against the number, 9 outright victories. In that span, though, K-State has been good covering numbers in Big 12 play. More college football when Hour 3 starts next. Welcome to Hour number 3, live right here on this Football Friday on the Early Line on SportsGrid. Our third and final hour, and although a Football Friday, so much to get into here. We will set the stage for the college football weekend, the game of the year so far, as we enter the Week 5 Saturday slate. Tomorrow night in Tuscaloosa, a top 5 tilt between second-ranked Georgia and fourth-ranked Alabama. We'll look at the Friday night games that we have, some other marquee matchups for this college football weekend as well. And then, of course, our final half hour is all about the best bets and the pick six for the entirety of your weekend slate around the National Football League. And albeit a Football Friday, Joe Ranieri, also the final weekend of this MLB regular season. Everything at stake over these final series this weekend, and of course maybe a doubleheader on Monday in Atlanta between the Braves and the Mets.
And sign me up for it here, Ben. I love this. I love the conference games. I love the put up or shut up in the NFL now as we get ready to say goodbye to September. And who doesn't love postseason Major League Baseball, Ben? Come on.
Come on. We love October. You have to love October. Before we get to October, it's the final Saturday of September. It's week number 5 of this college football season. And, Joe, we've had some great games. We've had some marquee matchups. We've had a ton of ranked versus ranked games. None have been better than what we are going to see on Saturday night in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The 4th-ranked Crimson Tide, a home underdog against number 2 Georgia. What a game it is going to be. And we want to get not just Joe's thought or my thought on it. We've already told you we think Georgia is the better side. What about you out there among all of the people? What's the best bet for the marquee matchup in the game of the year so far in CFB? It was the question for all of you in Fade the Public. And dare I say, Joe, I think we're starting to see a little bit of why the line is now only 1.5 in favor of UGA. The fact the Dogs are even a favorite is worth noting, but it was 2.5 earlier in the week. What is the best bet for Saturday's game between Alabama and Georgia? It was the question to all of you at SportsGrid on Twitter. Still most of the public, nearly 36%, selecting Georgia, laying 1.5. But the second most votes, nearly 28% on Alabama. The under 50 and a hook, as the total is on the rise ever so slightly, has the third most at 25.5. We got to get a Joe Ranieri Fade the Public stinger as well. The guy's here twice a week, right? We can't see Donnie's face for Fade the Public. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But Joe, the public still backing Georgia. What do you make of it?
So I've been here 20 years, man. I can't even get on the app, so I'm not holding my breath for the stinger. I agree with the public. I think the public is spot on. I also think the public might be realizing that Nick Saban ain't walking through that door anytime soon, and whatever record or success Bama has had in the past against Kirby Smart and company, that goes out the window the minute that Saban left the building here. So I think the public, very smart and astute in looking at Georgia in this one.
Listen, 52% of the money on the spread so far has been Georgia, right? So it's pretty close between the public, the sharp side, whatever it might be. Ultimately, as I have said before, I think the better football team is Georgia. Does not mean I think Alabama is a fraud, a joke, or they're not nearly as good as the record indicates, 3-0 after their opening 3 weeks and nearly covering in all 3 games, thanks to the huge fourth quarter against South Florida a couple of weekends ago. These are 2 of the top 10 defenses in the country. Alabama, Joe, one of 14 teams averaging 45 points per game or more this year. They are one of 2 teams alongside Navy that does not put up more than 450 yards of total offense. Why? They have been so explosive and haven't needed a ton. We will need everything if you are an Alabama backer for this matchup against UGA. I understand the Bulldogs were outgained by Kentucky. I know it was a bad game, both in terms of covering a number to start SEC play and in terms of what our eyeballs saw 2 Saturdays ago in Lexington. Georgia has lost 2 football games in their last 51 since the middle part of the 2020 college football season. Both have come to Alabama, both in the SEC championship. And I understand that Alabama has gotten the better of Georgia 2 of the 3 times they have met since 2021. But those were postseason games. Georgia's won 42 consecutive regular season games. I think Georgia comes out with a victory, and now it's a near pick-em money line play for the Bulldogs in Tuscaloosa tomorrow night.
Keep an eye on the Alabama rushing defense because they haven't had any. They've given up an average of 194 rushing yards, almost 5 yards per play against South Florida and Wisconsin their last 2 games. If that does it, if they give those numbers up to Georgia, it's going to be a very long day for Alabama. They need to stop the run, which brings up the issue of, can they actually run on this Georgia defense as well? I doubt that very much.
It was Georgia's weakness, if you want to call it that, last year. They were a top 25 rushing defense, but allowed nearly 118 yards per game. The previous 2 years, they won a national championship. They were top 5 in the country, allowing less than 85 yards per game in each. Again, both of these teams, I think, will have a seat at the table come college football playoff time. I bet Alabama with a profit boost at -115 to make the CFP before the year got started. +109, feel pretty good about it. And it's one of my favorite things about this new 12-team expanded CFP era. If Alabama loses this game and it's close, we'll say to ourselves, that was a true matchup between 2 of the 5, 10 best teams in the country. I hope they both get a chance to play in the CFP at the end of the season. Joe, let's get to some of the other games that we haven't hit on just yet in college football. That includes tonight, 7th-ranked Miami at home on a Friday night against Virginia Tech, a game that when the line opened up in the summer, it was a matchup between 2 teams we expected to both contend for the ACC. Virginia Tech, maybe that sleeper, up and coming, 21 starters back, the most we had seen for a power conference program this year. And there was optimism for the Hurricanes, but for Miami, it was proved that optimism in year 3 under Mario Cristobal. Through 4 games, Miami has answered the bell. Virginia Tech has not looked great. 2-2 and just 1-3 against the spread. Now a 17.5 point number. What are your thoughts on this Friday night in South Florida?
Well, big disappointment, Virginia Tech, for a lot of people so far here. But the good news for them is that they haven't played anybody in the ACC yet. That loss to Rutgers last week was very disappointing. Their defense was on the field for most of that game as Rutgers dominated time of possession there. Now you're asking a Virginia Tech team and its defense to go on the road and take on the single most dominant football team on both sides of the ball thus far through the season. We're talking about a Miami team here, Ben, that has overwhelmed its opponents. We're talking over 600 yards per game of offense, 9 yards per play, only giving up around 4 yards per play. They are scorching the earth this year, Mario Cristobal. The Hurricanes, listen, it's a big number. They're at home, and they have absolutely no intention of taking their foot off the gas against anybody. I would only lay it if I'm playing it here tonight with Miami.
Second best total offense in the country, 605 yards per game. It's Miami, it's Ole Miss. The two teams averaging more than 200 yards on the ground and more than 400 through the air. Cam Ward, the Heisman Trophy favorite, is thrown for at least 3 bills in every game. And do not forget maybe the best game of this Friday. Rutgers, a 1.5 point favorite only now against Washington. Some line movement against the Scarlet Knights, not great.